Chris, Mr. Molinar here to give you a little tutorial on how to make a graph in Excel. So I'm going to try to go pretty quickly, all right? So we are going to be making graphs from our data. We are going to make sure we reformat data to make more clear relationships between our variables. Remember, a variable is the thing you've recorded, right? It's the thing you're looking at, right? So high temperature, low temperature, air pressure, those are all things that change or vary, and then that makes them variables. And then we're going to try to compare these variables to see if they are related. Okay. Um, so we're going to start by making a simple graph. So how do we make a graph that kind of looks like this? All right, I'm going to hide that down there. Something I did before starting this video is, my data was all set up as like 3-10, 3-11, 3-12. Okay, and there are problems with that. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to change this stuff to day, right? So unfortunately, we'll no longer be able to be like, oh yeah, March 23rd was a really warm day. But this is going to help us with our graphing, all right? Okay. Um, all right, so let's compare our dates and our temperature. So I highlight the data that I need. I'm going to click Insert. I'm going to click Chart. It's going to make me this line graph, okay? Well, if I don't want it to be a line graph, which generally we don't, but we'll see. Um, I can change it to a scatter plot here with this setup option, right? And so if that chart editor thing isn't available for you, you just have to like double click on something in the graph and it'll open up this menu and you can start messing with it. Or you can click these little dots and click edit chart. Okay, so here we've got our scatter plot. My x-axis is days. My y-axis is temperature Fahrenheit. But there's a couple things I want to change here. Right now, it's giving me 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I really want to have every day as a marker on here. Okay, so we are going to go over to customize and we're going to scroll down to grid lines and ticks. Right, so when you open up customize, it's going to have a bunch of helpful stuff. Add a legend, change your horizontal axis, change a bunch of things. But we're going to change grid lines because that's what these lines are. So major spacing type, step, right? Right now it's a default step of 5. So if I put 5 in, you'll see basically what the graph looked like, except for it started at 0. But that's not what we want. We want a step of 1. See, now every date is listed. Right, so that's for my horizontal axis. Let's also make kind of the same change with our y-axis. Right now it's going up by 20. That's pretty big. It's a big jump. So we're going to change it to 10. It just makes the graph easier to read. Right? At a certain point, if we keep adding dots, it starts to look really busy. So you kind of want to find that happy medium. And 10 for me is a happy medium. Okay, so I have this high temp comparison to my days. I can see like, okay, interestingly, temperature kind of seemed almost to like be coming down because we had such a warm start to March. So what can we do with this? Well, the main goal of graphing, in my opinion, is to be able to compare multiple variables. So we are also going to add in low temperature. So what we could do is we could just highlight all of this, hit insert, chart. Okay, we get this graph. Pretty cool. But now I'd have to redo these things. So instead, what you can also do that's very helpful is you can go into setup. And setup is kind of deciding what data is going to go in the graph. It's kind of like the what is the graph about. customize is kind of like how are we going to show that data. All right. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add a series because in Sheets, a series is your set of data, right? Just like the World Series is a set of baseball games, a series here is a series of information. And it gives us this option to select data range. I'm going to move this out of the way. And the way you can do this in this box is you can say, well, I want everything from C1, which is this cell right here, colon to C26. That's where my value ends, right? C26, that's this cell. And this is labeled up here as well for you. So C26 all the way down there. But another way to do that, just so you know, is click select the data range. This pops up. And then you can just shift click and select that data. It works just the same. Okay, so here's my graph. All the data's there. I can kind of see some connection between these data points. Now, a lot of times in science, we want to use a scatter plot, but I'm kind of looking at this and saying, man, all those dots, it looks really complicated. I wonder if a line chart would be easier to interpret. And honestly, to me, that is easier to interpret. So you always kind of got to make the choices yourself. You know, you're the scientist. You make the shot. So, great. I've got this data here. Here's something else I'm thinking. We usually associate warm temps with red, cold temps with blue, but right now my high temp is blue and my low temp is red. So I'm going to switch those around. And to do that, I actually have to go to this series tab right here. I don't want to apply to all series because this is going to let me change the appearance of this stuff. Actually just going to, so I'm going to change this, right? And this is how you can change from like a dashed line to solid line. You can change the appearance of your points. You can put squares on there. I actually didn't really want a point, so I'm going to switch that back to none. Lots of things you can change, and I'm going to change this to dark red. Okay. Then I'm going to go to my low temp, and I'm going to switch that over to a dark blue. Okay. And I should also change my title, so high temp v low temp. Okay, so you can often say like variable versus variable, high temp versus low temp over 25 days. Okay. Kind of a cool graph. Now something we can change to make the graph just a little bit nicer, and this is kind of a thing that you can, it's very helpful, in my opinion. I'm going to customize my horizontal axes and vertical axes because right now it almost looks like my data is getting cut off. Okay, I don't really want that. So I'm going to change my minimum and maximum values to be just a little bit beyond what we need. You see? All right. You can do the same thing with your vertical axis if you needed to. Here. Sorry, vertical axis here. You can do the same thing, but this looks good. Okay, so we have this graph. Sweet. If that's all you needed to learn, you can pause here. But next we are going to look into some more kind of in-depth graphing data interpretation, right? Because I want to add in humidity percent. I would like to know, hey, on days that are really warm, is the humidity higher or is the humidity lower? Okay. So let's add in some more data. So let's go to setup, add series, click here, click here, click here, hit OK. All right, now I got a third series in here, humidity. It's gold, but where is it? Wait, why is it all the way down here? Oh, that's right, because percentages, like 53%, well, technically that's actually the number 0.53, okay? Right, remember these are all numbers out of 1. 38% can also be written as 0.38, and that's the way that the computer interprets those values. So that's kind of a problem. How could we solve that problem? Well, if I could change those percentages to whole numbers, or whatever you'd call it, an integer, a not percent, that'd be pretty sweet. Unfortunately, even when you use this, you can go to format, number. Okay, even if I change these values to a number, okay, it's still coming out as 0.88, 0.72. That's still not what I want. So now I'm going to teach you something really cool, and this is the use of functions. Okay, so in Excel, you can do simple math well, you can actually do really complicated math, but we're going to do a simple math operation. I'm just going to tell Excel that I want it to take the cell to the left, right? So we call these little block cells. Take the value in this cell and multiply it by 100. So times 100, right? We use this little star thing. It's a shift 8, okay? E2 times 100. It's going to change 0.53 to 53. And you can use this autofill thing and it'll do it for you. But another way that you can copy a function down. So now see, like, each of these cells. Look at this right here, E3. That's the cell to the left. E4, E5, E6. Right, so we can copy this function down and it'll adjust it so that it's referring to the cell you want it to. So now we have humidity as a whole number. Okay, so I'm going to change this series. I'm going to add in this value. Now I get to kind of spend some time looking at this and saying, is there really like a correlation here? Is there a connection here? And that's what your project, that's what the end of this project is going to be, is you're just going to be looking at the graphs you've made and just trying to make some kind of explanation, right? I see, like, now remember, something that's really important to remember here is that this is humidity as a whole number. So I noticed that up here we almost have 90, 85, almost 90% humidity, right? How'd it get so crazy high? Well, remember, there's probably not any more moisture in the air. Notice on this day with the low humidity, temperature was very high. So don't forget, percent humidity is the value relative to the capacity of the air. So if your air is colder, it has a lower capacity. So the same amount of water is going to be filling up 90% of the air's capacity on a cold day, when it's just like, 60% on a warm day. Some things like that. So instead of humidity as a whole number, hey, let's get rid of this. Let's use our old friend dew point. Right? Let's see what dew point has to say. Okay. So this, remember, dew point is more of an absolute measure of how much moisture is in the air. And I see that on warm days, there is a lot more moisture in the air. And on cold days, just look at this correlation. Look at the overlap here. And we could explain that. You understand why that is, but now you have data that reinforces it, right? To say cold air holds less moisture than warm air. Okay. We could also compare like dew point and humidity. Could be kind of cool. And the one thing we haven't really looked at here is air pressure, which I'm going to encourage you guys to look at. I'm going to make a third video about working with air pressure. All right, so that's your tutorial for adjusting graphs. Thanks.